how these two contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment should be apt, for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, they are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world, where the living entities have three kinds of enemies. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The reason why pure souls come into the existential circumstances of the material world, which is considered to be the criminal department of the Supreme Lord, is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, verse 27. It is stated that as long as a living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. By contamination, he is forced to transfer to this material world, where the living entities have three enemies, namely desire, anger, and lust. These three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence, and when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter the kingdom of God. One should not, therefore, be angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification. One should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. In this verse, it is clearly stated that the two doormen should be sent into the material world where criminals are allowed to reside. Since the basic principles of criminality are sense gratification, anger, and unnecessary lust, persons conducted by these three enemies of the living entity are never promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. People should learn Bhagavad Gita and accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna as the Lord of everything. They should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy their own senses. Training in Krishna consciousness will help one be promoted to Vaikuntha. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this chapter, description of the kingdom of God, is the most suitable chapter that we should be discussing on the occasion of your anniversary of deity installation in your temple. So as Prabhupada has told in different places, the temple is Vaikuntha. So you are living in Vaikuntha. You are having celebration of the Lord's appearance in this world. When the Lord appears, he comes with his personal abode. So he brings down the Vaikuntha into this material world when he personally comes. Since the deities, Radha Madhav, have personally appeared, they have brought down the spiritual world with them. And all of us are fortunate to live with the Lord in his personal abode because of our agreement in trying to serve the Lord in his personal abode. Now, this opportunity for us, we cannot necessarily claim that we are qualified, but it is only because of the causeless mercy of Srila Prabhupada that we are allowed this rarest of rare privileges to reside in Vaikuntha and engage in personal service of the Supreme Lord. Now here in today's verse, it's very interesting that two residents of the Vaikuntha, Jaya and Vijaya, they somehow by mistake, they stopped this four Kumaras from entering, thinking that what are these small children doing here? Just roaming around and casually trying to enter a place which is meant for those who are serious devotees. What are these small children doing here? So they just did not consider that these Kumaras were actually, as is described here, they are the fittest persons to enter Vaikuntha. But still, due to some misunderstanding, they were stopped. So they became suddenly very angry. So it is already explained that their anger was due to their great eagerness to see their most beloved master, Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. So it is not difficult for anybody to see the Lord, provided the one who wants to see has got that intense eagerness to actually see the Lord. Now, this seeing is not ordinary seeing, as we understand from the scriptures. It is actually the consciousness which is adapted in the service attitude towards the Lord. Why will anyone want to see the Lord? The purpose should be in order to serve him. The purpose is to serve him, not for the sake of our own sense enjoyment or sense gratification, but for the sake of pleasing the Lord by serving him. So here in today's verse, the description is being given. The Kumaras, they are considering how to punish these two doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jaya and Vijaya. Now, the punishment should be such that they can eventually be benefited. It's not any kind of punishment which is like permanently removing them from the Vaikuntha. No. Their mistake has to be corrected. What is the mistake? According to the Kumaras, they have duality in a place where there is no room for duality. We know the material world is a place where there is duality, dvandva. Why? Because material world itself has got this duality of matter and spirit. And the spiritual world, there is no duality because everything is spirit. There is no matter. That is one explanation. Also, in the spiritual world, Prabhupada says that the master and servant, the Supreme Lord is the master actually, and everyone else is a servant. But because there is no duality in the spiritual world, the master will sometimes act as a servant, and the servant will act like the master. This was demonstrated by Krishna when he accepted the role of becoming the chariot driver of Arjuna. And Arjuna, even though he is in the position of devotee, still on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna was ordering Krishna, please take my chariot between the two armies so that I can see against whom I have to fight. Senayor ubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya me achyuta. But Arjuna is conscious. Krishna is not my servant. No. Still, how am I ordering him? Because he is very kindly agreed to become my chariot driver out of love for me, out of my devotional relationship. So in that way, Prabhupada explains, in the spiritual world, there is no duality. But now the behavior of these two doorkeepers is such that they have developed this mentality of duality in discriminating between themselves or the other residents of Vaikuntha and the Kumaras. So therefore, the Kumaras are considering that they should be removed from this place and they should be sent to the material world. Because, as Prabhupada explains in the purport, the material world is the place which is considered to be the criminal department of the Supreme Lord. This is a very heavy statement. We don't like to hear such things, that everyone who is a resident of this material world by force of karma is actually a criminal according to the standard of the spiritual world. What is this criminality? So that is explained. In this material world, the living entities have three kinds of enemies. And the three enemies are described as desire, anger, and lust. So this desire is described as the desire for sense gratification. Desire for sense gratification. Everyone, without exception, is always desirous of satisfying one's own senses. This is the defect of the living entity in the material world. There's a desire, this desire for sense gratification. Now, one more enemy of the living entity in this material world is anger. Anger, Prabhupada explains here that one should not be angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification. Generally, we are looking for sense gratification in all our endeavors, all our activities, all our interactions in this material world. We are simply looking for sense gratification. But if there is no sense gratification, or we don't get the sense gratification we are seeking, we become angry. And then what about the third one? Lust. One should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. See, everybody has got this desire to acquire more and more and more and more and more. Any amount of possessions they have, they are not satisfied with that. That is also described as the lording tendency. The lording tendency is very much prominent in the material world. Even such exalted personalities like the Devatas, who are actually devotees of the Supreme Lord, but they are not without desire for lording over. They are not free from the desire for lording over. So this lording tendency is there. And even though Lord Krishna has given them the opportunity to lord over in a regulated way, of course, by taking responsibility for carrying out the duties assigned to them in the maintenance of this material world, in the creation, maintenance, destruction. They are all assisting the Supreme Lord in the functions. But still, they are not satisfied with whatever position they have got or whatever powers they have. They're not satisfied. They want more and more and more and more. This is the defect of material existence. The nature of material existence is such that I may have something that I may desire, I may get, but then I'll not be satisfied with that. I want more. If I have so many gross things, then I want something subtle. If I have something of one kind, I want another kind of enjoyment. So the real fact is, what is it that will really satisfy us? It is not any of these material possessions. Neither gross nor subtle possessions will satisfy us. What will satisfy us is when we are able to engage in devotional service and please the senses of Krishna. Why? Because our senses, as Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavad Gita, our senses are part and parcel of the senses of the Lord. So, if we want to satisfy our senses, instead of trying to satisfy our senses directly, we should seek satisfaction of our senses by satisfying the senses of the Lord. This is a secret Prabhupada reveals in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is called Rishi Kesha. He is the controller, the master, the owner of the sum total of all the senses of the living beings. So he can give us satisfaction of our senses simply if we try to satisfy his senses. Even if you are not always successful in satisfying his senses, simply the endeavor to satisfy his senses itself is enough. And we have experienced that as soon as we take to devotional service and we try to serve the Supreme Lord according to the instructions and the directions of the spiritual master, of the Shastras, of the Acharyas, we simply try. Immediately we become peaceful in our heart. Our hankering for this material enjoyment immediately is is conquered. So anytime a devotee feels, I'm having too much desire for my personal sense gratification, then the devotee should realize that this can be conquered only by our endeavor to practically engage in serving Krishna according to the directions of the spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. Somewhere we are doing some short circuit, even though officially we are all engaged in some devotional service. But that official engagement is not always enough. We have to look within our own heart and see that we have some motivation for even doing devotional service. What is that motivation? I want some sense gratification for myself. So if we identify what is the sense gratification I'm seeking in trying to engage in devotional service, then we are warned that pure devotional service is ahaituki apratihata. Ahaituki means without any material motivation, and apratihata means uninterrupted under all conditions, even in the material world. So if we engage in devotional service in that way, of course, in the beginning we do not understand what this really means, unmotivated or uninterrupted. But whatever our understanding is, at least we make an attempt after offering prayers to the Supreme Lord, to the spiritual master, to the previous acharyas, to Vaishnavas, and somehow we engage without speculating by trying to follow the rules, regulations, and principles. Then by the grace of the Supreme Lord, our desire for our own sense gratification will be actually destroyed. And by repeatedly attempting to purify our heart of all these desires, hidden desires, which we have accumulated in association with Maya over several millions of lifetimes. So it takes a little time to purify our heart of this contamination. And just like these doorkeepers are punished that 3 lifetimes you be in the material world. 3 lifetimes. Why? Because it requires time to purify this contamination. That is the indication. Therefore, Prabhupada says, somehow we have been in this material world for a very, very long time. But now, by the blessings of Lord Chaitanya, in this very life, we can end this material existence by engaging in pure devotional service, especially the Sankirtana. At least this life, let us dedicate ourselves for performing Sankirtana. And let us do this simply with the aim of pleasing Lord Chaitanya, pleasing the spiritual master who is the pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya. By pleasing them or trying to please them even, we may not be sure whether we are able to actually please them, but at least attempt is there, sincere attempt is there to please them by performing this Sankirtana. Then we are guaranteed that we will become purified in one life. See, what was not possible for the doorkeepers, they had to undergo punishment of 3 lifetimes. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling 1 life you engage in Sankirtana, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will actually deliver us without any doubt. We will go back to garden at the end of this very life. So this lesson is there for us from this particular verse. As Prabhupada says in the end of this purport, training in Krishna consciousness will help one to be promoted to Vaikuntha. So we should practice after learning Bhagavad Gita and accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Lord of everything. We should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy our own senses. So sometimes in devotional service also, devotees say, I'm doing service, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not finding real happiness or satisfaction in whatever service I'm doing. So that is the very mistake we have always been doing. Our understanding of our own happiness or our satisfaction is my sense gratification. So this has to be corrected. That's why do it without caring for any personal sense gratification. That is why austerity is required. Austerity means voluntarily accept some inconvenience, some distress, or some difficulty, or some dissatisfaction of your own senses or your mind. In all conditions of your personal body or mind or your situation, you simply render service to Krishna. And in that way, you will become purified. This tapasya will purify us. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shujjet. Rishabdev, while instructing his sons, he said, human form of life is meant for this tapo divyam. It's meant for tapasya of a different kind. Of course, material existence means even for sense gratification, people have to engage in some hard labor. A kind of tapasya they have to do. But we should be not engaging simply in hard labor like the karmis for our own sense gratification. We should engage in devotional service, and we should be ready for accepting some hardship in doing devotion. Of course, in Sankirtan, there is not much hardship except the mind. It's only the mind which is actually very, very, as Arjuna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. To control the mind and properly engage in devotional service is not easy in the beginning. But as Krishna says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha brichyate. It is possible if we endeavor by practice and detachment. So the practice is, this Rupa Goswami has given us sadhana bhakti. This is the practice. And detachment is, don't associate with non-devotees. Don't associate with non-devotees. Associate only with devotees. Perform this sadhana bhakti in the association of devotees. So without association of devotees, somebody thinks I can alone do some chanting or devotional service. And that's not going to help you. Not for a neophyte. That is never going to help a neophyte. So a neophyte should never endeavor to be away from the association of devotees. And in the association of devotees, automatically we develop detachment from the non-devotees. Automatically we develop. So much so that if we stay in the association of devotees and practice for little time also, then we will find it very, very congenial to be in the association of devotees, and we will find it not so nice to be with non-devotees. So this practice and detachment, this will gradually tame the mind. The uncontrolled mind will become gradually pacified, and then we'll be able to purify our consciousness and become properly situated for rendering nice devotional service, pure devotional service to perfect ourselves. So I'll stop here. Any questions anybody has got? Okay, here is a question. The Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, but in spite of knowing this fact, the doorman astonishingly and outrageously prohibited them from entering. Maharaj, how do we understand a mistake? You mean to say whether the mistake is possible to be done in Vaikuntha? Is that your question? Okay, how do we understand a mistake by the doorkeepers? Okay. Later on, it's explained that it was the will of the Lord that the doorkeepers stop these Kumaras, and thereby that will facilitate the Kumaras to curse the doorkeepers, because if the doorkeepers will take birth in the material world to participate in the Leela of the Supreme Lord. So it is described that the Lord has got he wants to fight with somebody. So with whom will the Lord fight? He'll fight only with his devotees. So his devotees disguise themselves as demons and they fight with the Lord. So therefore, it is for the sake of the Leela of the Lord that this pastime actually is taking place. Everything that happens in Vaikuntha is part of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, that we should understand. And even the interaction of the devotees with the Lord in the material world also is part of the pastimes of the Lord. So somebody may ask the question, the Pandavas are pure devotees of Krishna, why they had to suffer so much? It is actually the Leela of the Lord to demonstrate to us, the other devotees, that my devotees, they are so much devoted and attached to me and my service that even if they are put into great difficulty, they'll never give up their devotional service. They'll never demand anything from me. That's how much my devotees are dedicated to me. So, like that, the Lord actually performs his pastimes, which we cannot understand always with our ordinary logic. And that's why we have to hear about these pastimes from the acharyas. They explain that actually the suffering for the devotees when they participate in the pastimes of the Lord is not really suffering. How is that? Because they are situated on the transcendental platform. On the transcendental platform, there is no distress at all. There is no suffering. There is only transcendental happiness. Just like Lord Ramachandra, when he was separated from Sita Devi, when Sita Devi was kidnapped by Ravana. So Rama was apparently lamenting having lost Sita Devi. But actually the spiritual understanding is he was experiencing ecstasy in separation from his beloved. Vipralamba. It's called Vipralamba. Experiencing separation is one kind of ecstasy the devotee experiences, or the Lord himself experiences in separation from his devotee. Okay, now next question is, you mentioned that we too are living in Vaikuntha. How do we relate this with the pastime in regarding making mistakes, knowing certain facts? Now, for us who are living in this temple, which is non-different from Vaikuntha, because it's the abode of the deities. So what mistakes we can make is already explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We should avoid offenses. Offenses against holy name, offenses against Vaishnavas, offenses against deity. Like that, we should avoid offenses. The mistakes we make, we can make or we may make is the mistake of committing offenses. So, therefore, that's why every day we are reminded at the end of Mangalarti, what are the 10 offenses against the holy name? And we have to be alert in avoiding these offenses when we are engaging in devotional service and not offending Vaishnavas. Offense against Vaishnavas, of course, we definitely avoid offenses, but then we sometimes think that Vaishnavas, we think who are Vaishnavas? Those who are advanced devotees or those who are pure devotees, we think they are Vaishnavas. Some neophyte devotee, we think, oh, he is not Vaishnava, or he is not a advanced Vaishnava. So it's okay if some minor mistake happens. No, this attitude has to be corrected. Krishna does not tolerate offense against Vaishnavas, even if that Vaishnava against whom the offense is made is a Kanishta Adhikari, is a neophyte. Even that Krishna does not tolerate. So we cannot offend anybody. And Prabhupada has taught us this begging forgiveness for offenses committed unknowingly or against somebody whom we did not intend to, but somehow it happened. So every day morning, we pay respects to Vaishnavas by bowing down. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. We are paying respects to all the Vaishnavas and begging forgiveness if somehow unknowingly I have committed any offense. Please pardon me, otherwise I have no hope of engaging in devotional service or making advancement in Krishna consciousness. I cannot. If you don't pardon me, kindly pardon me. And because Vaishnavas are very, very, very merciful, we can expect that when we beg forgiveness, they will pardon us and our offense is cleared. But that is only for offenses committed unknowingly, inadvertently, in the course of doing service somehow. Some mistake may happen. That's pardoned when we beg forgiveness. But knowingly, certainly, we should not do any offense. Knowingly, we should not do mistakes. That's why we have to, on the one side, get enlightenment about how to do devotional service, how to respect Vaishnavas, how to interact society of Vaishnavas, how to deal with Vaishnavas. We cannot avoid interaction with Vaishnavas of all categories. See, we should learn how to interact with devotees who are more advanced than me, devotees who are as equally advanced as I am, my equals, my superiors, and my subordinates or my juniors. All the three categories of Vaishnavas, we should learn how to properly interact with them. That's why we should have relationship with all categories of Vaishnavas. In our community itself, it is there, it's available. That's why Rupa Goswami also in Upadeshamrita, which is for the beginner in Krishna consciousness, he says how one should respect a Kanishta Adhikari, a Madhyama Adhikari, and a Uttama Adhikari. The fifth verse, I think, in the Upadeshamrita. He says, for somebody, now how to understand this Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama? Of course, out of humility, a devotee considers, I am Kanishta, everyone else is either Madhyama or Uttama. That is one way of understanding this. But there is another way of understanding this verse, that in dealing with devotees who are at different levels of advancement as compared to myself, I should respect them appropriately. I should offer proper respect to them, due respect. So somebody who is not as advanced as I am, let's say somebody who's not even begun devotional service, I can say they are Kanishta. So to them we have to offer respect mentally offer respect. And to those who are equals, that also Rupa Goswami says, those who are initiated and are properly engaged under guidance of a spiritual master, we may consider them equals. So then we offer respects by bowing down to them and actually offering them respect in that way, visibly. And for Uttamadhikaris, those who are more advanced than me, I have to actually show them all respect and actually serve them as a menial servant. We should render service to more advanced devotees. And in that way, one has to actually learn to interact with devotees of all categories. Then here is one more question. Yad gatva nanivartante tadhama paramam mama. Krishna has told this in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Then how Kumaras, after going till Vaikuntha Dwara, did not even enter and came back? Now the Kumaras are actually, when they have become pure devotees, they are already situated in Vaikuntha. See, this going and coming, this we are seeing from our perspective as physically going and physically coming. That is not the meaning of going back to Godhead. Several times Prabhupada has clarified in several places that going back to Godhead means returning to our original consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. That's why Prabhupada says in some places, a devotee is not even interested in going back to Godhead. He is satisfied even if he is sent to hell, as long as he has opportunity for rendering service to Krishna even in hell. So try to understand what this, let us go back home, back to God. What does it mean? It means returning to our original consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness. Right now, we are in material consciousness, consciousness of sense gratification or material enjoyment or material lording over in the material world. That is our consciousness. We have to purify this consciousness by practice of sadhana bhakti, and by chanting Hare Krishna, and by rendering devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master in the association of devotees. We have to purify this mentality, and we have to return to our original consciousness, which is always engaged, eternally engaged as servant of Krishna. A servant of Krishna. So servant of Krishna means, first of all, servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Like that. So, first of all, learn to serve the spiritual master. And even before learning to serve the spiritual master, learn to serve the Vaishnavas who are seriously engaged in serving the mission of the spiritual master. So engaging in the service of the mission, engaging in the service of the servants who are seriously serving the spiritual master's mission. In this way, we train ourselves. And gradually the consciousness becomes purified as we become situated in devotional service, better situated. That means we give up our old habit of always trying to seek sense gratification. We try to seek satisfaction of the Vaishnavas, satisfaction of the spiritual master. And then we ourselves are satisfied with whatever prasada we get. Prasada means the mercy. Of course, the mercy is always available as remnants of food offered to Krishna. That is prasadam, yes. So we are satisfied with the prasadam, remnants of any food. You simply try to find out whether what you are eating is remnants of what is offered to Krishna. Then you don't worry about the taste. You don't worry about the taste. You learn to relish spiritually such prasadam, such mercy. And then the opportunity for devotional service, that's also mercy. That's also prasadam. Opportunity for devotional service. When we get opportunity to do devotional service, should accept it as the mercy of the Supreme Lord. We should relish such opportunities and eagerly accept this. Enthusiastically accept the opportunity and do it nicely. The best possible service we should do when we get an opportunity to do service. In this way, we prepare our consciousness to return to original Krishna conscious state. And wherever we are situated, even before end of this life, wherever we are, if we are situated in Krishna consciousness, we are situated in Vaikuntha. Just like Prabhupada. When he was in America, once he told that I am always in Vrindavan. So devotees asked him, how is it that we can understand you're always in Vrindavan, even though when you're in America? So Prabhupada said, Vrindavan means Vrindavan consciousness. Vrindavan is not limited to the physical place, Vrindavan. Of course, that physical place, Vrindavan, is Vrindavan. But even America is Vrindavan, provided one is situated in Krishna consciousness, Vrindavan consciousness. So it is a consciousness which is required to be purified. And that is the meaning of going back to Godhead, to return to our original consciousness. Any other question? Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.